Hey guys, it's Troy Francis. Welcome to my channel, The Dating Game with Troy Francis, and welcome to another whiteboard session. So today we're going to be delving into what is the difference between a high-value man versus a sex-worthy man. Now, there has been some humorous kind of debate in 2023 around this whole high-value man concept. If you remember, Rollo Tomassi was on Fresh and Fit, and then he was challenged about it, and because he'd made that humorous tweet, and there was all that kind of drama about it that happened. I think it was like it's kind of early summer last year. And the reality of the matter is, of course, a high-value man is kind of in the eye of the beholder in one sense, because, as Rollo rightly said, a high-value man in a tribe in some rural area of a country in Africa is going to be very different to what you might think of as a high-value man in Mayfair in London or in New York or whatever, right? So there's differences in terms of what high-value man is, okay, or what a high-value man might be regarded as, and that's absolutely fine. However, in general, when we're discussing the dating scene in the Anglosphere, which is, where most of, I think, the people who watch my stuff are, and often, and Western Europe, and, across most of the world, we've kind of got a pretty good idea, apart from in these very far-flung rural areas, what a high-value man would mean, okay? And the problem is this, right? There is a big misconception in the viewing public about what makes women actually viscerally attracted to a guy. And men will usually think, okay, so if I get the high-value credentials, then that's just naturally going to make me into a guy that women want to sleep with, and it's a done deal, and I don't need to worry about it. Okay, so I get the car, I get the CEO position, I get the muscles, I get a nice watch, I get a suit, and job done. That's it. And then the beautiful women are going to pursue me. But here's the thing: what women regard as being sex-worthy, that is to say, what they find sexually arousing, are not necessarily the same things. Okay, there is crossover. There can be crossover, but they're not necessarily the same things. The reason for this is because women have a dual mating strategy. So at different points in their life, or even at different points in their cycle, frankly, they might be looking for different things. Okay, so typically when she's younger, when she's enjoying the fruits of being a fertile, beautiful young woman out and about, exploring life, having an amazing time, the kinds of things that she's looking for, the kinds of qualities that she's looking for in a guy are going to be different to when she's a bit older and she's looking to settle down and she's maybe looking to start a family and she's looking for more stability. All right. So typically the younger woman is going to be looking for the sexy, hot guy who's got these like different traits, who's a bit exciting, he's a bit bad boy, he's maybe not very reliable, he's a risk taker, he's adventurous. There's all these different things going on. When she gets to a point in her life when she's thinking, well, actually, hang on a minute, I need to settle down here, I need to maybe do things a bit differently, she's going to be looking for other characteristics. And it's those latter characteristics, more in regard to material success, that we tend to think of when we think of a guy who is, a high-value man, okay? And sure, many of those things are great to have, but are they sexy? Not necessarily. So let's get into it, okay? What are some of the things typically that we think of when we think of a high-value man? I've written just a list of things here. There's going to be more. You can write more in the comments below. Some of these you might disagree with, some that you might agree with. But I think we can all I think there's a certain consensus on a lot of this stuff, certainly from the discourse that I see in the space. So a high-value man, we tend to think of, well, rich, financially successful. Okay, that's one. Tall, because height always comes into these conversations. Every single conversation about this height comes into it. So rich, tall, handsome, okay? Tall, dark, handsome. I haven't put dark on there actually, have I? But, tall and handsome. I mean, it's pretty standard stuff, right? These are the classic sort of hallmarks that you would get in a women's romance novel, okay? Beyond that, godly. I put godly as a little bit of a nod to the Christ pill guys, okay? Because again, and this depends on where you're coming at this from, but those people would say, well, look, if a man is a man of God, here's a high-value man, okay? So if that's your belief, then that's going to be high up there on the scale. What about being a pillar of the community? What about being somebody who is well respected in his local community, or maybe in the business that he runs, or in the local town, or he's done some very laudable things socially? All of that stuff. Surely those things are the hallmark of a high-value man. A man who garners the respect of other men. Surely that makes him high value, right? What about intelligence? As guys, we tend to rate, not always, but for the most part, we'll often rate other men who we deem to be intelligent. We think, well, that guy, he's knowledgeable, right? He's really taken the time to understand, this subject matter. He's really taken the time to think deeply about what he's talking about. And that's admirable. And we look up to him, right? That's a high value guy, okay? Competent. Well, competent's kind of an umbrella term, isn't it, for a lot of this stuff. But somebody who is well organized in his life, who is let's say, responsible in different areas, financially responsible. He pays his taxes on time. He does this. He's law abiding, etc., etc. He is able to handle the vicissitudes of life with ease and comfort. Okay, that is, we would say, high value. Socially conscious. I mean, that might come into it, right? For some of you, that might come into it. Is this a guy who cares about society? Now, whether you're on the left or the right side of the fence, I mean, that could come into it, right? If it might be, is he concerned about the environment? But then on the other side of it, it might be, well, is he concerned about the current degeneracy of society, right? Okay, surely a guy who's concerned about those things and who is making an effort to improve those things, or to make some kind of a mark on the world, surely that is a high value guy. And finally, and I put this one here because I got some comments about this the other day, a leader. Okay, a leader in the community, right? It kind of dovetails in with the pillar of the community, I suppose, doesn't it? But if you're a leader, but say you're like the boss, say you're like in the company, you're the CEO, okay? Surely that makes you a high value man. Well, contextually, yes, it does. Because if there's a dude and he's the CEO and I'm an employee, then yes, in regard to me and my position in that company, if I'm working for him, he is a high value man because that's my livelihood and I've got to be polite to him and I've kind of got to do what he says, because if I don't, I might get fired, okay? So within that context, yes, he's a high value man. And all of these things, I'm not saying any of these things, I'm not saying any of this stuff is bad. I'm not saying any of this stuff is negative. A lot of this stuff is very laudable, okay? A lot of this stuff is, or a lot of these things are things that many of us would aspire to, okay? I'm sure many of us would like to be rich. I'm sure we'd all like to be a bit taller. You know, we could all look smacks, try and look as good as we possibly can. And these other things, you know, being a pillar of the community. Well, who wouldn't want the respect of those around him? Okay, intelligence. You know, I think most of us. I mean, I certainly value intelligence. I think it's something to aspire to. I think we could all always be learning. Competency, yeah. Socially conscious. I'm not so bothered about that, but you know, a lot of people are, and you can understand why. The problem, though, with all of this stuff is it's not particularly sexy to women. Now, I'm now going to get some pushback from this in the comments. I can feel your fingers, your troll-like fingers, typing on the keyboard already, giving me pushback about this, because you're going to say, okay, Troy, but surely, at the very least, being tall and handsome and being a leader, surely those things are sexy, even if you disregard the rest of it. And look, I'm not going to get into or rehash some huge black pill argument about do looks matter, because yes, of course, looks matter. Yes, height comes into it, and yes, money comes into it. And look, money is a whole other thing that we can make another video about, right? But yeah, sure, those things do come into it. But the problem that you've got, and the reason that I've got a career and I've been able to make money out of teaching this stuff, quite frankly, is because there are plenty of guys who are ticking off that. You know, they're rich, they're tall, they are decent looking, and some of them, you know, they're leaders. Maybe they're leaders in their business, or they have some sort of position of importance in the, you know, some kind of political or whatever influence, and they're not getting any action. And that's the problem, okay? Because if it was as simple as you guys all think, and look, we're all, as guys, we're all guilty of this, right? Because we're all kind of nerdy, right? We all think everything's just this algorithm. We think everything is like this algebraic equation whereby, okay, right, so I have that, plus that, plus that, plus that, equals, here's a hot girl in my bed. The reason that we think that is because we are predominantly thinking logically about this stuff, okay? We are not thinking about this emotionally. And the way that women think about dating and sex and about love and relationships is predominantly emotional, okay? And that is the kernel of the problem that we have here, okay? And that's why there's this dividing line. So on the other side of this board here, we have this term sexworthy, which is a slightly cringe term. The first time I heard it used was by Real Social Dynamics. I think it was Julian or one of those guys. If you remember Real Social Dynamics, big dating company that was operational some years ago. They still do stuff, but they're more like teaching self-help kind of concepts now. But anyway, they used to talk about this idea of being sexworthy, and it kind of is what it says on the tin. It's like, well, are you a dude that the girl thinks, right, okay, I select him for sex. For sex, that is, not necessarily I select him to be my long-term boyfriend and provider and to pay the mortgage on time and everything else, okay? We're talking about arousal. And Rollo Tomassi talks about this, right? There is a difference between attraction and arousal, because a lot of this stuff here can be attractive, right? Right, okay, he's got a good job. Okay, well, that's attractive. That's an attractive quality. This is the kind of thing when women talk about, okay, so on paper, he's my type. Yeah, he's a decent job. Okay, that's attractive. He's intelligent. That's attractive. Competent, you know, he's not an idiot. That's attractive. Okay. great, but are those things sex-worthy? Are they setting her on fire? Or the opposite, right? Are they making her liquid in certain areas? Let's say probably not. Competency, and I think it was, and I've got to credit Casey Zander to some extent for this subject matter because he talks about this very eloquently. I did a reaction video to him the other day, and he's got some great points to make on this, and I agree with most of what he says on this subject matter. But I mean, no woman ever, and I think this is a quote from him, no woman ever in the history of the world has ever said, "Do you know why I slept with that guy? Because he was so fucking competent." The competency on that guy, I have to sleep with this dude. He's so fucking competent. Like no woman ever on the planet has said that, and no woman ever will. Okay, because competency, yes, it's the kind of thing as guys we might appreciate. We might think that's a good characteristic to have, but women don't find it sexy. Okay, they might tolerate it, or they might, at a certain point in their life, when they're looking to get married, they're looking for a provider figure. They might think, oh well, he's competent. Okay, he's a good husband material. But you know, in their fun party years, in their most fertile prime, where they want to, you know, just meet those cool, sexy guys, they want to go to the Cancun phone party. Nobody gives a fuck about competency. It's the stuff on this side that makes the difference. So what's the stuff on this side? So sex worthiness, okay. Well, the first thing, and we've said this before, is it's emotion. It's all about emotion or feels, right? And I did a video where I talk about what we call edge, having edge as a guy, something over and above mere competency, right? Something over and above the minimum. The minimum is, yes, you try and look as good as you can. Yes, you try and dress well. Yes, you've got a job and you're earning some money. Yes, you aspire to some kind of status within the community. But those things really, and yeah, of course, people have different varying degrees of that, right? So if you are Drake, then obviously you're in a very different position. If you're Leo, you're in a very different position. But for most of us, okay, people have varying degrees of those things. But really, looking out for those things, it's kind of the minimum requirement these days. It's kind of the minimum that you look as good as you can, you're in shape, okay. Yes, if you don't have those, you're probably going to get excluded from the marketplace. But you should really, as a man and as somebody who cares about himself, you should be looking after that stuff anyway. So let's take that as the baseline. That's the bare minimum. But if you've only got the bare minimum, you're going to be judged harshly against other people in the marketplace who have more. Okay, you're going to be judged harshly against those guys who are bringing emotion. Well, who's bringing emotion? Who's giving her the feels? Who's like making her tingle? Well, I'm afraid, and the female viewers aren't necessarily going to like me for this, but I'm afraid it tends to be the dudes who are channeling this. Okay. The guys who are bringing the drama. And, you know, I hate to say it, but the guys who are bringing a bit of toxicity into the mix. Now, what I'm not saying, guys, is go out there and be toxic. I'm not saying go out there and be an asshole, right? However, you have to be aware of these dynamics because the men that women tend to crave and the men that women remember and will lust after and will pursue, okay, rather than just leave on read or whatever it is, tend to be the guys who are bringing this energy. And toxicity, okay, that's a rather loaded term, but drama certainly. Okay, so what does it mean to bring? What is it about drama? What does it mean to bring drama? Well, are you somebody who's an open book? You know, do you go on the date and run the date in a very typical mainstream kind of a way, whereby she says, okay, so where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? And you kind of lay out a 5-year plan, and you effectively recite your LinkedIn status and all of your, you know, well, I've done this, I've done that, and I hope to make partner by next spring, and then I want to buy a house here, and I want to have 2.4 kids, and then I want to have a dog, and I want to do this. And it's all very linear, it's all very logical, it's all very sort of laid out, okay? There's not much inspiration there, there's not much sort of passion, because what are they really looking for? I mean, what is a sexy male archetype? Well, it's kind of the Christian Grey archetype, isn't it? Or the James Bond archetype. It's kind of that sense of somebody who is a risk taker, right? Somebody who's passionate, somebody who's got some fire behind the eyes. She can't quite pin him down. She can't quite put her finger on where she doesn't quite know where he's coming from. Okay, she's being left on her toes, and women will often say this. You'll often hear women say things like, "Oh, I love this guy because I always feel like he keeps me on my toes." Yeah, you know, it's not the reliable, competent, godly pillar of the community dude over here. He's not keeping her on her toes, okay? He might be a great provider. He might be a very good man, but he's not getting her excited, okay? He's not getting her wet, right? He's just being a good provider and and again, think about the difference between provider versus lover, okay? So this, broadly speaking, all of this stuff is provider. You could say is provider stuff. All of this stuff is with the and okay, I admit, with the exception of tall and handsome, you know, and we can say that can cross over slightly into this, because obviously if he's extremely handsome or whatever, that is also in itself going to affect something of an emotion within her. But looks fade, it's, there's got to be a bit more to it than that. But I'll say these ones are contentious. But for the most part, this is provider stuff. Here, this is lover stuff, okay? This is the soap opera, Latin American telenova stuff. Okay, this is the stuff of excitement. This is the stuff of fantasy. This is the stuff of romance, of sex, of dreams, and all of that. Casey Zander has a great phrase. It's something like, the men that she wants inhabit the world of fun and adventure, or something like that. It's a really great phrase, and it's absolutely true. Okay, the men that she wants, and I'm talking about wants sexually, are the guys on this side, all right? She might, and she probably will, end up settling for a dude on this side at some point. But really, in the initial stages, you want to be here. And a key reason why you want to be here is because it's actually easier. It's actually easier to transition from this to this. It's easier to transition that way than it is to audition for the role of provider. So what I mean by that is, counterintuitively, it's almost easier to be her lover for a one-night stand than it is to be her boyfriend. Why is that? Well, because if she's sizing you up as the boyfriend, then she's looking at you and she's thinking, okay, so she's looking at all these other things. It's like, okay, so how much does he earn? So what property does he own? Where does he want to live? What's he going to be like with kids? What's his attitudes to upbringing? Maybe what's his religious status? Is he practicing? There's all these different things that she's going to be considering. When actually, just to become the lover, a lot of that stuff doesn't come into play when she's in that short-term fun period, because it's like, well, it doesn't really matter. None of that stuff really matters because she regards you at that point as being a short-term pleasurable fling. Then, once you guys have become intimate and maybe you start sleeping together and it's good and you realize you've got a vibe and everything else, then if you want to, and you do want to become something more, it's going to be easier for you to then start to demonstrate some more of these qualities and get over onto this side. But it's far better, and this is what we always teach clients, to start here, okay? Particularly if you're in the nightclub in Miami, or you're going out in Mayfair tonight, or Chelsea, or New York City, or whatever it is, right? You want to be presenting this stuff because, quite frankly, if you go out and present as this, she's probably going to think you're a bit of a Ned Flanders, a bit of a boring fucker. It's not really going to fly. Other things. So the guy's on his purpose. We talk about this a lot. Now, there's some crossover here because, to be fair, these guys may also be on their purpose, but I think a little bit of sort of positive selfishness is at play here. He's focused on what he wants to do as opposed to anybody else, and I put selfishness here as well. Narcissism, doesn't sound like a very attractive trait, but a lot of the time guys who think highly of themselves, they're thinking highly of themselves. They're not necessarily being socially conscious. They're thinking, well, how good do I look tonight in my velvet jacket? They're thinking about that. They're not thinking about, oh, what about the state of the world? How can I cure the degeneracy of modern society, right? Those dudes, again, tend to do pretty well. Being less agreeable, okay, and being uncompromising in terms of what you want to do and how you want to live your life. All right. So look, again, as I say, I don't deny there is crossover between these two things. And ideally, really, you want to aim to be a bit of both. So you want to look as good as you can. You want to seek to earn decent money. Godliness, obviously, that's a personal choice. Pillar of the community is kind of up to you. But I mean, in the end, if you become successful, you're likely to garner respect of those around you. So that's kind of going to happen naturally. Intelligence, again, I think intelligence is fine, but is it the most intelligent guys at the Cancun phone party who are getting laid? Absolutely not. So in terms of short term, that's less useful. Socially conscious leader's a contentious one, and the reason leader's a contentious one is because, so in the comments in a previous live stream I did, people were saying, well, what do you mean? Like, I don't agree with you that leaders are not sexy. Women are going to find a leader sexy. Mystery, as in mystery method of the game, he identified leader of men as being one of the key attraction triggers for women, and yes, that's true. A guy who can seem to be socially dominant, who can command the attention of those around him, who can command the respect of those around him. Yes, that is sexually attractive. That is something that women like. But it all depends on context, right? Because if the guy is the leader of his accountancy firm and he's the CEO and he's got 45 people working for him and they all have to be nice to him because he's paying them and all the rest of it, then yeah, he's a leader. But when that guy goes to the nightclub, is he going to be surrounded by girls because of that leader's status? No, because it's situational. So So, as I say, there is some crossover between the two camps, and ideally you don't want to, I mean, what you don't really want to do, just from a life perspective, you don't want to just do this and be the kind of, you know, dirtbag who's sleeping on a mattress, and you're not doing anything that's socially conscious, you're not doing anything that's responsible. You want to combine the two, but what you have to recognize is that in terms of sexiness and sex worthiness, it's this stuff rather than the stereotypical high value man stuff that's going to get you where you want to be. Anyway, I hope this has made sense. I hope this has been of some value. Please do give me a like. Please do hit the notifications bell. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Write your comments below, and I will see you guys again very soon. Bye-bye.